is Caverna. We'll be playing the game over 12 rounds, right? And the basis, very basics of the game is that we'll have some tokens which we call dwarves, and then we'll be using those dwarves to do actions turn by turn on these action cards. There's a few that you can see, and we'll have more reveal through the course of each round. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me first start with scoring because there's a lot in this game, and in my opinion, when you get the breakdown of the scoring, at that point you start to understand how the game works in general, because then you can figure out how to play the game in a way that you can score, or you can play the game meant to be in a way. So you get points for every farm animal or dog you have. So we have 4 types of farm animals in the game: sheep, donkeys, these are the sheep, boars, donkeys, and cattle, right? And also, addition to that, we have dogs. The difference between dogs and farm animals is that you can put a dog anywhere and the dog will not run away. You can put the dog in the entry dwelling or in a meadow. These are meadow tiles. So these green spots, green patches, they're meadow tiles, right? And if you put the dog here, the dog doesn't run away. For the other animals, however, if you don't put them inside a pasture, they tend to run away. The dog also does another thing. The dog keeps 2 sheep at bay. So if there's 2 sheep here and you put the dog here, the dog will keep them in there. So the dog will keep track of them. Like, okay, you ain't going anywhere. So the dog's basically the shepherd, right? Other than that, we'll get pastures. Whenever we get pastures, we must build them over meadows, right? When you also turn this over, you'll also see that there's a pasture there. Each pasture can hold 2 animals, right? As seen here. So each pasture can hold 2 animals. Each pasture with a stable, these little houses, can hold 4. Each meadow with a stable can hold 1. And then we have the double pastures, which hold double from the single ones. Again, they must be placed on 2 meadows.
So I got a question. The pasture here without the fence around it will still maintain an animal. It won't run away, right?
Yeah, the animal won't run away. It'll just keep it. And the dog can always keep 1 sheep. If you have more than 1 dog in a meadow, you can keep plus 1 sheep. So it's dog equals to sheep plus 1. If you have 3 dogs, you can keep 4 sheep there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can always keep a boar in a forest, but it has to have a stable in it. Right?
Yeah.
You can also keep donkeys inside ruby mines or iron mines. They're donkeys. And in the dwelling, you'll notice each of the dwellings have space for dwarves. They can also keep a pair of animals, especially the entry-level ones, right? So you can always keep a pair of animals in there just because you wanted to keep them there, right?
So when you say when you say pair, they have to be the same type of animal? Or?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. The interesting thing about this is that you can keep those animals and you can move animals around whenever you want. So let's say if you did an action where you're hey Alexander, are you gonna join in?
Hey, would I be too late for the teach?
No, we just started.
Okay.
Jump in.
And then?
Okay. Yeah, I'll hold off on your question for a sec, Steve, and then once he joins in, I'll get to that.
That's very cool that the action spaces are different every game. Wow, that's really cool. Because I like.
What's the server name?
It's Caverna TTS, Passwords TTS Club.
The action spaces are the same. They come in different in a different order.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's pretty cool.
So these ones are always the same, and then we have these different stage cards. You'll see stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. They'll all come in different orders, like except this one. This one always comes here. Like the Wish for Children always comes on round 4. So yeah. Other than that, everything else is just shuffled in.
Hey, when you go over the animals for Alexander, I'm just gonna make a coffee in my kitchen very fast. So sure. I'll have my wireless headset on. I'll listen in. I'll be right back.
Okay, sure. Okay, so give 95, 98, 99. Okay, good. Okay, so I'll start from the very first. So this Caverna, our objective. So basically, we'll be playing the game over 12 rounds, and we'll be controlling a dwarven clan, right? We'll be using dwarves that we have. We'll start with 2. We'll be placing them over these action cards with more revealing each round. And then we'll be doing them every round, turn by turn, like one by one. And then we'll be doing our actions in order to fill up spaces, produce stuff, farm animals, so on and so forth, right? So, in my opinion, the best way to explain this game is to go through the scoring markers and then work through that, because then it becomes easier to understand like how you want to play this game, right? So we'll start with farms. This is one of the key parts of this game because you need to farm animals to get food, right? So we have 4 different kinds of farm animals. We have sheep. These are sheep, cattle, donkeys, boars. We also have dogs, right? The difference between dogs and farm animals is that you can put the dog anywhere. If there's a space or anything, even in this cavern, or if you have a meadow like this, you can put the dog here. The dog will not run away, right? Okay. Dogs never run away. Dogs are loyal, right? Animals, however, if you keep, sheep like this, they'll run away, or even other animals. So to keep the animals in, we either make pastures or we make stables.
Are the sheep supposed to be little white dots?
No, they're not supposed to be white dots. Are you seeing them as white dots?
Yeah.
Let me see if I
can rejoin.
No, let me see if the back fixes it.
Yeah.
Better?
Okay. Yes.
Good. Okay. Anything else are you seeing as dots? If these are dots as well, I'll just.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Okay. So in the meadows, you can put a dog. Dog doesn't run away. Animals, on the other hand, do. So you need to keep them in pastures. It must be a pasture like this, a single pasture, or a double pasture, like these ones. Or you need to have a stable there, right? This cheat sheet explains this really well, right? So if you have one pasture, you can have 2 animals in there of one type. It's any one type, by the way, for the animals. So you can have, let's say, 2 sheep here because you felt like.
Okay, so it's 2 per tile and doubled for the building.
Yeah, double for the building, and then the pastures just have. The double pastures just have 4. The only thing about pastures is you must build the pastures over meadows. So the single pasture, for the single pasture, if you took this tile, right, they come off like this, but you flip them over, you build the single pasture. So you don't have to worry about that. But for the other one, let's say, in order to build this, you need to do something like this, right? Because meadows, and then you put the pasture right there, right? Okay. Yeah. That's how you keep animals in. Now, there's some other ways to keep these animals in. For example, with the dog. The dog can keep some sheep in there. So, for example, a dog can keep 2 sheep in there without the sheep running away. So, dog's keeping watch. If you have 2 dogs, it can keep up to 3 sheep there. So it's always the first dog can keep 2, and after that, every dog will keep dog plus, sheep plus 1. Okay. So boars, you can keep boars in the forest, but you have to build a stable, right?
Yep.
Okay. You can keep donkeys in mines. Only 1 donkey per mine. You can also keep some. You can also keep a pair of animals. 1 pair of animal inside the entry dwelling, right? Good so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Each farm animal and dog will give us a point, right? There's also a penalty for not having a type of animal, which is -2 points for each type you're missing. So there's 4 types. If you have all 4, no minus. If you don't have all 4, it's -8. So you have to cover that ground up somewhere. Then we have grains and vegetables. So let's start with that. So you see these patches of soil, right? In these patches of soil, we can plant vegetables. So the vegetables can be, so we'll have grains or vegetables. So grains are these, and then they're vegetables, right? So if you put grains or vegetables there, they multiply when you take the sow action. So you plant them in the sow action like this, right? So when you plant them, they produce more, and then you can harvest them during the harvest phase. More on that a bit later. But those also give you points at the end. For each vegetable you get a point. For grains, you get 1 point per 2 grain, right? Because grains easier to farm. Then we have rubies. Rubies are these. Rubies have a lot of stuff that we can do, especially the ruby. You can see on the ruby card right down there. They allow us to gain resources or place a dwarf out of turn. I'll explain that a bit later, but they also are 1 point each. For every dwarf we have, we'll get a point. For every unused space, so you see on our board we have a bunch of spaces, right? So we have the forest spaces and we have the cavern spaces. Every space that doesn't have anything on them is a -1 point at the end of the game. There's obviously some forgotten races that do forgotten foods that do circumvent that, but more on that later, right? And then for every furnishing tile, pastures, or mines we built over here, we get points for each of those buildings. There's a bunch of them.
And it's best go over each one.
Yeah, it's best to just read through them, and they're very self-explanatory. Parlor, storages, chambers work a similar way. They're just the yellow-colored buildings because those give us points at the end of the game. So they're typically the ones with the stars, right? So they'll give you a variable amount of points depending on how you went about it. Gold coins, well, go on. If you have a question.
So they're just end game.
Yeah. And then gold, well, these gold are just victory points. Some actions from buildings or Forgotten Folk do allow you to use these for something else, or they're also used to get food as well when you have to feed your people. So gold is pretty good. They're just flat out points in general. Then there's begging markers. You get begging markers when you can't feed someone. So you get 1 begging marker for each dwarf you cannot feed. So food is very important, which is why farms and farming animals and then sowing grains and vegetables is often much prioritized because that's what you want to do because you have to feed them. Right?
One correction, Slayer. You take a begging marker for every food that you don't have, not for every dwarf you cannot feed.
Okay.
So it's 2 begging markers for every dwarf you cannot feed.
Oh, okay.
It's worse. It's worse when I played it. Okay. I mean, we never got begging markers last game because no one got to that point. Anyways, so everyone good with the points, right?
Yeah. Actually, one question. How do you keep track of lost animals? If like an animal gets lost mid game, so you get those negative points right away, not at the end of the game. Then
no, you get them at the end of the game. So at the end of the game, you'll just count which animals you don't have. So if you don't have a donkey, you get -2.
So lost animals don't give you negative points. It's only
no. It's not lost animals. By missing, it means any animal you don't have at the end of the game.
Like any type of animal.
How many do you start with?
Correct.
None.
Okay.
So, like, if you have a donkey and a boar and a dog and a sheep, then
I see.
You're going to lose one for not having cattle. Or 2, whatever.
Well, 2.
2. But the thing you have to remember, a dog is not a farm animal.
Right.
Dogs don't give you negative points. Dogs only give you positive. Yeah.
Someone's not a cat person.
Yeah, I have 2 cats. What are you talking about? Okay. So yeah, let's talk about the actions in itself, right? So you see these actions, right? So all these action cards at the start of the round will gain some resources, as you can see at the top left, right? Some of them will get, so for example, this one will get an ore if there's nothing there. But if there's an ore there, it will keep getting a stone every round, at the start of every round. It's the same as drift mining, excavation, food, ruby, blah, 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 right?
What happens if you have more than one ore?
These are on the cards itself, right?
Right.
And in our turn, when we take our action, we put our dwarf, right, on the action space we want to take. We take all the resources on top of the card, and then we do the action.
Okay.
So every round there'll be resources added to a lot of these cards. And then when you go to that, you just take the resources, and then you take the action that you're supposed to be. For example...
This is a dwarf?
This is a dwarf. This is my dwarf, but it's a dwarf.
Is that supposed to be a disc?
Yes.
Okay, that's fully loaded and it's just a disc.
It's just a disc. Okay, you go there. So let's say if there was one stone here, I would take the stone back to my supply, and then I'll do this action, which is gaining a cavern tile. So I'll do the action. That would be my turn for that exact dwarf. Okay, so let's talk about the actions step by step. So strip mining, you take all the resources and then you get 2 wood from the supply. Drift mining and excavation are similar. The only difference is in drift mining, you will get this cavern tile, and you can place it on your cavern. The only thing that I'll mention about this is that you need to place this connected to a pathway.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't place this here because you felt like it.
Okay.
It has to be connected, right? The same thing here as well. The same thing in the forest as well. So even if you build forest tribes, they must be connected. One with the other, right? Okay. The unique thing about caverns is that the hallways are also needed because, and I'll explain this in advance because it's best to explain this while I'm explaining caverns. When you have something like this and you have double hallways, you can build a mine over that. So all ore mines that you build must go over 2 corridors adjacent to each other, right? And then in a future round, you can build a ruby mine in this corridor as well. Right?
Okay. And
so all mines go in a corridor. Yeah, all mines go in a corridor, pretty much.
Okay.
So you can put the ruby mine in a single corridor or beside an ore mine. There's a benefit to doing that. You get a ruby for that. There's an action space for it. But that's pretty much how you get ore mines out. You want 2 hallways that are connected to each other, right beside each other, basically, right adjacent to each other.
I'm still a little confused on how the action card triggers. So, for example, strip mining. So yes. I get an ore, and then what does the parentheses mean again for stone?
So you get all the resources on top of the card. At the start of every round, there'll be a resource added here, right?
That's just part of the round. There's resources put on.
That's just part of the set. Yeah, that's just part of the setup of every round.
Okay.
So let's say in the first round, 1 ore will be added here. In the second round, 1 stone, because it's already over there.
Okay.
Let me show you how it works. We just click this button. Give it a second. Give it a second. There you go. So every round we reveal the top card of the deck, we put it over here, and then we click the restart button. And we just put resources on every card.
Okay.
And if there are already resources there, then you, instead of putting the same resource, you put the resources in parentheses.
Oh, cool. Nice. And then so the longer someone doesn't use that action, the more attractive the action becomes because resources are building up on it.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Very cool.
Okay. So, go on. Go on, Alexander.
Sorry. For these mines, where do we... is that from the action mining? Do we... Okay,
so in order to build a mine, in order to build caverns, we need to do this. There's a to build iron mines, an action comes up in a future turn. I can show you that card. This one.
Okay, that's a different.
That allows you to build it on over 2 hallways, right? So yeah. Okay. So moving on, right? So in drift mine, the difference between drift mining and excavation mining is that instead of placing a tile, which is just 1 cavern and 1 hallway, you can place 2 caverns. What are caverns? You can furnish a cavern by putting these dwellings in there. Obviously it depends on which one you're putting, and yada yada yada. Some go into meadows, some go into caverns. Right?
How do we tell which one's which?
So basically, for example, workroom, you can put it here because there's an empty space there, right? And these, so you'll notice that these ones, especially like the cuddle room or the Luigi, which ones do we know that where can they be placed and how?
All of these can be placed in empty caverns, and some tiles that come out from the Forgotten Folks can only be placed on meadows, forests, or But all of them go into empty caverns.
Okay.
Yeah. If we look at, for example, the elves, so this one you can see that it is green, so it goes on a meadow.
Okay.
And if we look at the human ones, then this goes on a meadow. This one goes on a field.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some of them actually tell you meadow or pasture. Some of them actually tell you meadow or pasture, so they must go there. But other than that, you can place them on caverns as long as they have an empty space.
But yeah, all of these goes on empty cavern.
Okay. So yeah. So pretty much that's why you want caverns, because you want to build more buildings and you want to grab points out of them if there's a certain point condition that you can fulfill. This action just gets you starting player and gets you all that food. And 2 ore, which is pretty sweet. This one can give you all the rubies. And you get 1 ruby plus 1 ruby for if you have at least 1 ruby mine. Right?
Okay.
I'm explaining the basic ones. I'll get to the advanced one in a sec because I'll show them one by one. Then we have imitation. You can pay 4 food to use an action space that is occupied by another player. The only one that you can't use with imitation is starting player. You can't just copy starting player because you feel like it. So that's the one thing you can't do. Logging, you take all the wood, and then you go on an adventure. I'll explain the adventure in a sec. These ones just get supplies. This one gives you ore, and it'll give you plus 2 more. You'll take all the ore, and then plus 2 ore for every ore mine you have. And this one is housework. In housework, you take a dog, and then you furnish a cavern, or if you don't want to, you don't. When you furnish a cavern, you just take a building, put it on your cavern. Done. Right? Forest exploitation, you get all the wood, and you get a vegetable. Wood gathering, you get all the wood. Clearing, you get all the wood, and then you choose to place one of these tiles in your forests. Any tile you build from the forest must start from your entry dwelling. So let's do like this, or like this,
Okay.
or like this. But yeah, must be connected to that.
And so having that icon covered gives you one additional food. How often?
Yes, yes, it does.
Just is it one time?
Is it one time?
Okay.
One time. Okay. So that's how you get clearing. Sustenance does the same thing. It just doesn't give you wood. It gives you food and a grain. And then you can place your tile. Slash and burn is where you actually plant your vegetables and grains at the start. So at that point, in slash and burn, you can also place a tile, and then you can plant your vegetables or grains. In order to plant vegetables or grains, you must have them in your supply at the start. When you do that, you can plant up to, you can plant your vegetables there. For example, I could plant my vegetable there, and this would create another vegetable here. So when I harvest it, I can take one of the vegetable out without completely depleting the plot itself, right?
Okay, so you add 2 tomatoes or 3 grain.
So when you add 1 grain, you add 2 of them there.
Okay.
When you add a vegetable there, you just add 1 more vegetable for it to be harvested out, right?
Okay.
Okay. Now let's talk about the stage 1 cards. So you have these stage 1 cards. These 3 will come up in a random order in the first 3 rounds, right? So we'll start with sheep farming because that's the top. So in the sheep farming action, there'll be a sheep placed here, but before that, you can spend wood to place either a single pasture or a double pasture, or spend a wood to build a stable, right? And then you can grab all the sheep there. Got it?
Yep.
This is one of the ways to get animals. The other one is adventure. But other than these cards and adventures, there's no real way to get animals. So if you want to get animals, might as well start there, right? Okay. Or adventures. Then we have ore mine construction. I mentioned how ore mines are constructed, and you just put the ore mine there. Blacksmithing, when you go to the blacksmithing, you you put a dwarf there, right? When you put the dwarf there, you spend up to 8 ore in order to give this dwarf a hat. That means you're making it a warrior. So let's say if you spend 8 ore there, I turn it into the 8th state, flip it over, so now it's a warrior with 8 strength, right? After you do that, you can go on adventure. And this is where putting hats on warriors come in handy. So if you look at the bottom of your board, there's an expedition loot. There's 2 sheets of expedition loot. So when you take the expedition, you will see there's a number with a shield. There's a shield and a sword with shield and axe with a number on it, right? That means how many times you can, how many of expedition loot you can get. So for example, for the blacksmithing one, you can get 3 loot. And you get any 3 loot up to the strength of your warrior that's in that action. So for example, if this is the case, then it's an 8 warriors. You can get up to 1 to 8 of these. But
does that mean you can get like a 5 and a 3?
Yeah. No. It's
one of
from
any
1 to 8. You can grab 3 rewards.
3 rewards. So I can
it's
do.
not added.
You could
it's
grab
not added.
So you could do 3.
and a 2.
So you could do 3 8s if you wanted to.
No, you can't. You can't repeat the same one.
No, so you could do 5, 3, and 2.
Yes.
For example.
Or 6,
Yes.
7, 8. Or you can do 6, 7, 8, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So each of them you'll see. So some of them have the slashes on them. So you can. So if you choose to do, let's say if it's a strength of 2, the warrior, you can take 1 wood and 1 dog. That's perfectly fine because they're 2 different rewards, right?
Okay.
So again, the rewards are fairly self-explanatory, except for the bit about the top one, right? Which is the one strength expedition gives you 1 of 3 rewards, and you choose whichever one, right? So you can Choose to take after expedition all weapons +1, or the wood, or the dog. After an expedition is over, your warrior obviously levels up because of the experience of it, right? They went on an adventure, they're stronger because they got more experience. So you always bump them up by 1. If you take the 1 strength one, which says after expedition all weapons 1, you upgrade the weapon level, which is the hat level, for all of your dwarves that have a hat by 1, even if they're in your they're near your board or in your dwelling, like this one. If this is a hat of 2, right, you would not only take that to 10, you would also take this to 3.
Can you ever get more than
Can
you ever get more than 6 dwarves throughout the game, or is that your max?
That's your max.
Okay.
If you try to get, well, I will say this: 6 dwarves is a lot of food to pay for them. It's a lot of food. But yeah, anyways, so those are the 3 stage 1 cards. Then we have the Wish for Children, the Ruby Mine, and the Donkey Farm. These will come up in the next 3, or in stage 2, in the next 3 rounds in random order, except for this one. This one always comes here. So Wish for Children is the way to get more dwarves. So when you put a dwarf there, you get a child. You put the child there. Right? And then after that, so when you do that, and then you furnish the dwelling. I will mention with children, you cannot get children if you don't have space.
Okay.
So you need to build. So in this one, you have to build the dwelling beforehand. Then you can do this action, and then you can build another dwelling for more because if you want to expand more, right? These are always ors, by the way.
So what's the difference between furnish a dwelling and furnish a cavern?
So furniture cavern could be any. So you can use furniture cavern to build anything. Furniture dwelling means you must only build a dwelling. One of these things.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So this does turn over to the other side when there's a certain card in, where is it? This one. When family life comes over, this flips over. So when it does, then it becomes just much better, right? They can furnish the dwelling and get the baby later, right? That one's, the other side is the either or. This one is literally furnish a dwelling first and then you reproduce, right?
And what's the second option?
Or 3 points.
Okay.
Or 3 points. Okay. This one lets you build a ruby. You can build a ruby in either a hallway or beside an iron mine. If you build it beside an iron mine, you get 1 ruby immediately.
What's the symbol up here?
Expedition. This is the same. Shield and axe.
But why is it like a different image entirely?
They're all just, it's a symbol in front of an axe, looks like.
Oh yeah, good call. This one's different too.
Okay. Now we have donkey farming. This works exactly like sheep farming. There's a bunch of donkeys at it, and then you can do the same amount of thing, right? You get donkeys. Okay. Stage 3 cards. Again, random order. They'll come in a random order. And this one, expedition, just allows you to get 4 expedition rewards. Pretty nice. Ore delivery. An ore and a stone will be added there every round. And then you can go there to produce 2 ore for every iron mine you have. It's just a better version of this. It's just a better version of ore mining. Family life. In family life, you can reproduce, and then you can sow some vegetables or grains on your fields. Empty fields. But yeah. Right? Okay. Then you have stage 4 cards. Stage 4 cards will have ore trading. You can just trade ore for points and food. Up to 3 times. Ruby delivery, you get a bunch of ruby. The first time, if there's a ruby there, 2 rubies are added. If there's 2 rubies there already, It'll just add the ones in the bracket. And then it just does the same as ruby mining, except it's a bit harder to get the +1 ruby because you need 2 ruby mines. And then adventure does the same thing as blacksmithing, except you do two different adventures. So these 2 different adventures is you do one adventure, you level them up, and then you do another adventure. So yeah, it's just making them stronger over the course of the card. And then we do scoring at the end of, the 12th round. Now under these cards, you'll see there's some text: no harvest, no harvest. These symbologies, and then these ones, right? If it says no harvest, that means we don't do any harvest. If you're in a round and that round ends and there's a leaf-like symbol there, right? We will do a harvest. So in the harvest phase, you will need to harvest your fields, breed, and also feed your people, right? So if you look at the bottom of your board, there's a harvest time. There's a harvest time sheet there, right? So in the harvest, we will first do fields. We'll just go to the fields, and then we will take off 1 grain or 1 vegetable from the field itself as part of, harvesting the field itself. Then you have to feed people. So for every dwarf you have to feed them 2 food. And for every dwarven child you have, that means child means it's still on the card, right there. If it's still on the card right there, you have to feed them 1 food. They cost less food, but you still need to feed them, right? Now, and then we'll do breeding. So for every 2 animals you have in a pasture that has space, you will add 1 more. It doesn't matter how many there are, you will just add 1. So if there was 2, and there was if there was a double pasture like this, these would produce 1. Even if there was 3, it would still produce 1. Right?
If there's 4, then produce 2?
No, 1.
Oh, 1. Okay.
That's sort of just how that's how Uwe Rosenberg usually does breeding.
If you have at least 2 animals of a type, you receive an extra animal. They do not multiply quadratically.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm still having a difficult time understanding how these action spaces convey the round structure. Is it each column is a round?
Every card is a round.
Every card is a round.
Each card is a round. Wow, that's a lot of rounds. Okay.
So I believe the rounds are only from here onward, right?
Yes.
The column or the card is a round?
Each card is a round for these 4 columns.
Basically, the first round is this card, the second round is this card, the third round is this card.
And on and on and on.
Onward to the right.
Okay, and then everything on the left is just always available.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. Cool.
Okay. Now if you're going to look at harvest time, you have to feed each dwarf you have 2 food. That's a lot of food. In order to get those food, though, you need to look at your player board and at the bottom right. At the bottom right, at any time, you can sacrifice certain resources from your supply in order to gain food. For example, 2 donkeys and a cattle, or 2 donkeys or a cattle, or 4 points or 4 gold will give you 3 food. A ruby, a vegetable, a boar, or 3 coins will give you 2 food. Similarly for this, that'll give you 1 food, and similarly for that, that'll give you 0 food. So yeah, dogs are worth 0 food, so you don't want to discard dogs. Dogs are nice. There's 3 points anyways. Okay.
But you can't discard a dog for 1 point, right?
No.
Okay.
You only discard resources for food because you need to feed your people. That's why you're farming.
Technically, a dog is already worth a point, so...
Yeah.
Okay.
A dog is always worth a point, so...
And we have to have the vegetables harvested already. We can't sacrifice one that's in the field.
No. Animals, you can obviously sacrifice one on the pasture.
Yeah. So this tells you the value of each animal. You can't get rid of points for food, right?
You can get rid of points for food.
Oh, you can. Okay.
As long as you have the points.
It's the other way around. This is how you turn your points into food, and
got it.
based on how cool your points are, or how efficient your points are, then you lose less points by feeding your people.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, interestingly, it's always worth getting rid of points than getting begging tiles.
Yeah, it's always better. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So you have to feed 2 per dwarf you have. So that's like if you have, let's say, 6, you have to feed them 12 food.
Yeah.
That's 4 cattles.
Yep. A lot. Okay.
Okay. Now, if you've been wondering, how on earth do we get cattles and boars? We get cattles from an adventure.
Expedition.
And, and we get boars from these 2 spots when you cover them.
Oh, what that means. Interesting.
So yeah.
Okay.
So that's harvest, and we'll do these every single time. Now on to rubies. What use does rubies have? Rubies give us resources, and they also let us play a dwarf out of order. So whenever we play a dwarf, we always have to play a dwarf that is not a warrior first. So in ascending order. So let's say we'll play the blank ones first, and then we'll play, like, let's say if you have a 9 and a 2, you'll play the 2 first, and then you'll play the 9. If you use a ruby, you can play them out of turn, so you can play the 9 first.
Okay. Yeah.
Instead of a blank. Pretty much. Right?
Makes sense.
You can also use rubies and food to get cattle, or 2 rubies to just furnish, to place a singular cavern tile. Maybe you want one. Right? Okay. Everyone good so far?
Yep.
Last thing I'll mention is the harvest markers. So we'll have these harvest markers that will pop up at the start of every round, right? We'll obviously be shuffling them at the start of the round, and I'll just reveal them straight up. So we'll have these, we'll shuffle them, and then at the start of the round, let's say from this point forward, when we start this round, we'll put a token there randomly, and then we'll flip it over to see what that is, if there's a harvest or not. That way you can plan around for that round, right? For these ones, it's just harvest. We'll do a harvest phase. For the question marks one, each question mark that you unveil get added here on this little card.
Oh, so that's like famine.
Yeah. So when the first question mark is revealed, there's no harvest. When the second one's revealed, you must pay 1 food per dwarf instead of harvest. So we don't do a harvest, but we have to pay 1 food per dwarf we have, right? And then this one, we will either skip the field or the breeding phase. So we'll do a harvest, but we'll have to skip one of these phases, and each of the choices will be individual for every player. So for example, I could choose not to do breeding, and Keel could choose not to do fields, right? It's retroactively our choice. Got it? Okay. Any questions, guys?
Nope.
Okay. Then I think we can get started. I'll do a quick reload, and then